What's going on, guys? Today we're talking about Dayparting on Amazon PPC and how you can analyze the hourly and daily performance trends in your PPC campaigns, and from those trends, determine whether or not Dayparting is right for you, and if it is right for you, how you can implement effectively a Dayparting strategy. So let's dive in. By the end of this video, you're going to know how you can make these beautiful charts and graphs showing you performance by day of week, as well as hour of the day, including all of this critical information such as ACoS and spend trends throughout the day, and then our 168-hour tables, heat maps showing additional information, but most importantly, the bid change rules, how you should be adjusting your bids for maximum efficiency and profitability throughout the week, throughout the day, and all those things. But before we dive into this report, we first need to get our hourly campaign reports from Amazon. So grabbing those reports is pretty easy. Just from the ad console, you are going to come over to measurement and reporting. You'll click on sponsored ads reports. You'll hit create report. We are getting a sponsored products report. We are getting the campaign report, and we want this hourly data so that we can analyze that intraday performance. Now, you'll notice for the reporting periods, Amazon only hangs on to this data for the last 28, 30 days or something like that. But the reports that you download, you can only download at 14 days at a time. So you could just grab the last 14 days, but if you wanted to grab from, let's say, the last 30 days, you could go from the 9th, and you can see here how they block out these other days. I can only go up to the 22nd, so you can take that, you can download that report, and then you could come back and grab a second report from the 23rd all the way through the 5th. You know, we don't usually like to include just the last 24, 48 hours of data because sometimes there's some sales attribution delays, so this would be pretty good. That would get you the last 28 days of data in two separate reports. You can easily just combine those two reports, just combine the Excel sheets or copy paste from one sheet to the other, and then you can have the last 4 weeks of data on a single sheet for yourself. Now, when you first come to our fancy schmancy Dayparting calculator, the link to this Google Sheet calculator, by the way, is in the description of this video. So when you click that, it will not take you to this sheet. It will take you to a link that allows you to duplicate this to your own drive so that you can have your own copy. Please do not request edit access to the master link copy. We're not giving you guys edit access to the copy that everyone is using. So you'll copy a version of this to your own drive, and then you can upload your CSV file. So you will come over to the data tab. Now there are two ways to get the data in here. You see we do already have the header rows in here. You can just copy and paste all of the data from the CSV files you just downloaded to Amazon, and you can paste them into here. Sometimes when you get into the hundreds of thousands of rows, the clipboard on your computer breaks. You know, the clipboard, the thing that's like copying it to the memory before you paste it. Sometimes it breaks, it goes really slow. Even Google Sheets sometimes has some problems. So a more sure way to do things is to go through File and the Import method. But before we import, I want to draw close attention to the currency column. And this currency column is something that is starting to appear on most people's accounts, not all accounts. So just check your downloaded version really quick. If you do not have a currency column, then you can just delete that column and then upload, and everything will work just normally. But if you do have the currency column, no needs to do anything here. You'll just upload it and everything's gonna work great. So I'll show you what it looks like. We'll go to File, we will go to Import, and then we'll say Upload. We're going to Browse, or actually we're going to just, we've got the file right here, so we'll just drag and drop it here. It's gonna take a minute to upload depending on how big the file size is. I think this one's about 75,000 rows, so pretty easy to manage. And then in a moment, once this gets uploaded, you will change this setting. It says import location, say replace current sheet, and make sure you're on this data tab. So we're going to replace that current sheet. Everything else is fine. We will say import data, and then that will upload all of the Dayparting hourly data from all of our PPC campaigns. And once that's in there, all of the calculator will automatically update those performance metrics, those charts, the heat maps, everything like that. And then we can dive into the analysis. Okay, our report finished uploading. So now I have it in here. It took about 60 seconds, so not too long. And that's for 75,000 rows. So bigger reports could take a little bit longer, depending on Wi-Fi speed, all those types of things. And so now when I flip over to these tabs, all of these tables have updated accordingly with the data in the data tab. Now, for this demonstration, I am using 4 weeks of data. So that means for Monday, what we see going across this row, that is the totals for all of the Mondays combined, which in this case was 4 total Mondays across all of our campaigns. And so we've aggregated this performance. So now you can actually see what the conversion rate trends are like throughout the week and how CPCs are fluctuating, how your ACOS is fluctuating. But the core metric for our purposes is the RPC, which is the revenue per click. If that is a new concept to you, search YouTube for That Amazon Ads Podcast, RPC, and you'll find a really good explanation of that. The very short explanation is that RPC, revenue per click, is basically conversion rate if conversion rate were in a dollar amount, because instead of doing orders divided by clicks, we're doing sales divided by clicks. So it's conceptually very similar to conversion rate, only it's a dollar amount. And the reason why we're using revenue per click is because we are trying to raise and lower our CPCs to hit a certain ACOS throughout the week, throughout the day. And so we want to make sure that our CPCs and our RPCs are ebbing and flowing in tandem together. So on this chart, what you're going to see here is we do have a few charts here to see, are your CPCs and RPC going together? If not, that would be an opportunity to do some day parting. And then down here, we're just showing where the spend volume is and where the ACOS trends are rising and falling so that you can see, are you doing a good job of riding those waves throughout the week? Now, something else that may be very important here is the coefficient of variation, which is essentially a calculation based on all of the average ACOS, the average conversion rate. How much does that swing throughout the week? And if you're seeing that these numbers throughout the days of the week are kind of low, let's say, below 10, 15% and are showing green, then that means there's probably not a very large opportunity to do a lot of day parting throughout the week. So for an account like this, you see that there is not a lot of changes in conversion rate throughout the week. Sure, some things look red. That's just because of how the conditional formatting works. But look, if the average conversion rate for the whole entire week is 19.4%, the lowest that it ever gets is 18.8%, which is a very small decrease. And the highest it ever gets is 20.8%. So in total, you've got a swing of about 1 percentage point throughout the week. This is something that, sure, you could maybe do a tiny bit of day parting, but personally, my recommendation would be to not invest a ton of time or resources into trying to clean this up because the impact will be negligible. However, if we go to the hour of day chart, now this is a different story. Here, we are seeing much larger swings of conversion rate, ACOS, and RPC, and we're seeing that our coefficient of variations are over 15%. For ACOS, is getting up over 20%, which just means a lot more volatility happening here, and therefore more opportunities to do some day parting and hopefully see some improvements. Now, this account already does have some day parting active on it, which is why you see this big arc of a spend increase during the working day. And that is the primary driver of all this additional sales at really good ACOS. For this brand, the target ACOS is around 45%. But let me tell you about how we got here, because the number one mistake that I see pretty much 95% of the people make who are trying to do day parting is they are chasing the sales volumes. Now, if you've been following That Amazon Ads Podcast, you know we're big proponents of optimizing your placement settings as well. And while top of search doesn't always perform better at top of search, it generally performs better at top of search for an average seller. So when it comes to day parting, after doing analysis on dozens upon dozens of different accounts in different categories, from B2B brands to B2C brands, I have found, on average, in a very general sense, we see that there is more shopping traffic in the evenings, but there are better conversion rates, i.e. better ACOS and better sales opportunities in the daytime. So while sales might not be as high during the daytime and you're getting more sales volume in the evening, a lot of times you'll find that your ACOS is actually higher in the evening and you have lower ACOS in the daytime. And the reason for why you don't have a ton of sales volume there is because you haven't been increasing your bids with a day parting strategy to drive that extra sales volume during the day. Another reason for why you might be seeing larger spend or larger sales in the evening, in addition to just more people being home from work and having more time to go online and be shopping, so there's probably just larger traffic on Amazon in general, but also a lot of your competitors might have been doing a day parting strategy during the day, and so that's why they were getting all the clicks and you were not. They were capturing those conversions while you were not. Or they might just be running out of budget by the end of the day, so now your lower bids that were previously 10th place in the auction are now first place because all the other first place campaigns are out of budget. And so now you're able to get more spend and sales in the evening. And while there may be more traffic and sales volume in the evenings, what we do see typically is that people are doing a lot more window shopping. They're browsing to research or explore, but not with as high of a purchase intent as the audiences that are shopping during business hours. Now, the only evidence I have to back this up are the dozen or 2 dozen accounts that I've audited their hourly performance data and also my own shopping behavior. I know that for myself, as I go about my day, if I'm going on Amazon at 10 in the morning, 9 in the morning, while it is the middle of my working day, it is because I need something that I am thinking about, and I'm thinking I'm going to buy that right now so that I can stop thinking about it and it will be here later tonight or tomorrow. So I'm going to go on, shop really quickly, and buy something within the next 5 to 10 minutes. And I think I'm not unlike a lot of people in that regard, which is why we actually see these increased conversion rates during the daytime. Now, if you are a brand that is selling B2B, then the changes in conversion rates are going to be astronomical between who's shopping during business hours versus all other times of the day. And you'll probably also see during days of the week, you're probably going to have much larger conversion rate swings here as well. This brand just so happens to be a B2C brand that rightly identified that while before Dayparting, they had more sales volume and traffic in the evenings, they were getting much higher ACoS during those times. And so they deployed a Dayparting strategy to put more spend, get higher CPCs during the business hours where the revenue per click and the conversion rates were at their peak. Because at the end of the day, we do not care about just driving a ton of traffic to our listings if that is converting traffic. Our goal is to drive a lot of high quality converting traffic to our listings to maximize as much revenue as possible. So that is why in the next phase, as we jump into the bid change rules, you'll see that most of those are coming from the changes in the revenue per click, because our goal is to maximize revenue. So how do we get more revenue? How do we get more sales? Quite simply, we need to put more spend where the revenue opportunity per click is higher. Now, for those who really want to get into the weeds of the data, we do have our 168-hour tables, because you may have noticed we have days of week, hours of day, and the question is, what if you want to see those together? We want 7 days a week times 24 hours a day. Well, that's going to get you to 168. And so now if you are curious to see that heat map broken out like this, then here you go. So we've got the conversion rates, we've got the revenue per click, cost per click, and ACoS. The only thing I would warn you about using these is that if this is 4 weeks of data, then this is going to be kind of unreliable data, because it looks like Mondays at 11 a.m. is the best time of all with a 30% conversion rate. However, we only have 4 data points there because we only hit Monday at 11 4 times in the last 4 weeks. So if you're even using a 2-week report from Amazon, then you only have 2 data points. So this data is nice and granular. The only trade-off with granular data is you're going to have less data confidence with each of those points. So when it comes time to day parting our strategies and actually implementing these strategies, you do not want 168 bid changes happening throughout the week. And you don't want your bids going up to 30%, down to 0% increase, and then skyrocketing all over the place trying to chase these conversion rates. So what we are going to do when it comes to actually implementing the bid change strategies is taking these heat maps that we're seeing and chunking them out into blocks. So we will have different sections throughout the day during which we were saying we are going to be increasing bids or decreasing bids. Now let's take a look at these bid change rules and talk about how we can implement them. So it's pretty straightforward, but as you can see here, we have a lot of preset day parting strategies. We have it broken out by day of week, and then just splitting off weekdays from weekends. And then we break out the day into 8-hour chunks and 4-hour chunks. Those are those windows or blocks of time that I was talking about. Of course, you could do a day parting strategy, which is going by day of week and hour of day and doing all of this to create 168 bid change variations throughout the week. Not at all my recommendation, but it's available if you want it. My recommendation would be to just look at the performance of weekends versus weekdays. That's going to be your first notable shift. You might see that for some brands, the weekends kind of start on Friday. And so you could see some performance here where the weekend performance difference actually kind of includes Friday. And then Monday through Thursday would be its own period. So if you wanted to change that, it would be pretty easy to do. But if you click on these cells, because you've already made a copy of the sheet, you can edit it yourself. You can drag this down to have a little more room here. And you could just remove Friday, just delete that, and you can remove that from the weekdays. And then over here on the weekends cell, you would then just be sure to type in Friday and include that one in that first cell as well as the second formula. So you can do that as well, and you can update those. Same goes for these chunks of time. So if you're realizing that, well, we just broke out the 24 hours into 3 8-hour chunks, you might realize that for you, from 0 to really 9 a.m. is really a period of underperformance. And then starting from 9 a.m., going on to maybe it extends till 5 p.m., so 1700 o'clock, then you can also change those here as well. Now, when it comes to implementing these day parting strategies, my recommendation is to round off these bid adjustments, which the bid adjustments are just calculating what the conversion rate or the revenue per click for that period was relative to the total. So for the whole last 2 weeks, because when you're looking at a keyword and you're optimizing that keyword's bid, you're getting that keyword's total data for the last 2 weeks. And so what we're trying to figure out is, are there different times of day or different days of the week where our conversion rates tend to be above average or below average? And now we are going to make our bids increase or decrease by those same proportional amounts so that we are riding the ebb and flow of these trends, riding that wave, the roller coaster of emotions of the Amazon shoppers, so that we can capitalize on peak shopping opportunities, peak sales and purchase opportunities, conversion, and then reducing the bids where that audience just isn't really the audience we want to be going after. So that's the simple calculation for all these bid adjustments. It's just calculating the relativity of either being higher or below that average for that period. And my recommendation is to round off these numbers when it actually comes time to implement them, round them off to the nearest 5% or 10%. So for example, if we were breaking out the day into these 8-hour chunks, from midnight to 7 a.m., there's also just such low volume there. So hypothetically, if this was coming out where we're saying the bid adjustment was 20%, you also want to double check the volume, right? So it might say that there's a really high conversion rate during some period of the day, but you had like 3 orders during the night, right? And I should say, I probably should have said this at the beginning of the video, but really to have enough statistical significance in the data here, you're probably going to need, I would say, minimum $20,000 of spend in the entire reporting period. So if you're a brand that on average spends less than, say, $10,000 a month, you might see some interesting insights around the days of the week, like splitting off weekends and weekends, or weekends and weekdays. But trying to get really, really granular with the data, I don't think you're going to have enough statistical data there, unless if you're combining, 3 months of reports. But you really need to have at least $20,000 of spend here before I think you're going to have enough data throughout the day, enough sales and clicks and orders and all those things to really have statistically significant bidding adjustments. So just one thing to bear in mind there. Now, in this case, if I was going to be implementing a strategy following these 8-hour chunks, these 3 8-hour chunks, from midnight till 7 a.m., and that is inclusive of the whole hour of 7 a.m., so up until 8 a.m., I would basically just set 0, just round down to 0. And then from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m., I would put a 10% increase to all of the bids in my campaigns. And then from 4 p.m. till midnight, I would put a 15% decrease, because we see that around 4 p.m., that's where those conversion rates really start to drop off. And again, you may want to tweak this a bit. This is just the default, but if you're looking at the performance by the hour of the day, you might see that these conversion rates, which is, so this was 15, you might see that the conversion rates really start dropping at 2 p.m. or something, or maybe they stay strong until 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. So you can tweak that, and if you do see a sharp drop off at any period, you can adjust those times, and then these will be recalculated. So let's just say we're going 0, plus 10, minus 15 for our day parting bid adjustments, and we're just going to apply that to all of our campaigns, and let's talk about how we would do that. Now, what a lot of people want to do is to implement these day parting strategies directly in the Amazon Ads console. So what that would look like is you would have to click into one of your campaigns. This is a fake account and fake campaign, so we'll just take future campaigns. We're going to go to the campaign settings, and you would scroll down to the bidding strategies, schedule rules, and this would be where you would enter a day parting strategy. Date range, we're not specific to anything. We would just say starting now, never end. And then you could choose a specific start and end time. The only problem with this is twofold. You're going to have to do this for every single campaign because there's no bulk setting, and day parting optimizations need to be revisited and re-optimized. So if you have 200 campaigns, you're going to have to do this, and you're breaking it out into 2 different blocks. You're going to have to go in and create 400 different schedules, 2 blocks for 200 different campaigns, one at a time, clicking through all these. And on top of that, if you're trying to do this strategy where we decrease from 4 p.m. till midnight, you can have your time here be from 4 p.m. until midnight, 12 a.m. But you'll see Amazon actually does not allow you to go negative. So I can't actually, when I try to type negative, it's saying choose a percentage between 1 and 100%. So You also couldn't increase by 120% if you were a B2B brand that really gets those huge differences there. So you're very limited in what you can actually do in the ad console, and it's very slow and cumbersome. So this is not an idea or a strategy I would recommend. Instead, we really like using AdLabs. So in here, it would be pretty easy. You would just say, create new schedule. That's going to generate this. And then you look back here and we see, great, from 0 to 7, leave it blank. From 8 to 15, we'll come back here from 8 a.m. to 15, and then you can drag it all the way down to select for that whole period for the week. We'll say we're going to increase by 10, and then finally from 4 p.m. till midnight, which is the rest of this block, we said we were going to decrease by 15%. So type minus 15%, and then that's ready to go. And then the last step is just applying it to all of the campaigns. We randomly generated these campaigns, so we'll just say select all, and then you would hit save, and you're all set. Now, some of you are probably wondering, should I do, if I have 222 campaigns, should I do 222 unique day parting schedules, one for each campaign? The answer is no. As you saw from this table, we already saw how problematic things become when you get too granular. The same thing is going to apply with your campaigns. You're going to run into problems with a lot of low data scenarios, and that's the first problem. The second problem is that it's not going to really make that big of a difference. So from what we've seen in these audience shopping behavioral trends throughout the day, it is usually not campaign specific or keyword specific. It is very largely just the type of behavior of that audience that happens to be on at that time of day. Some are more trigger happy, more ready to purchase. Others are more window shoppy, not so ready to purchase. If you are a Amazon seller that is selling you run two different brands on the same advertising account, you have a B2B brand and a B2C brand, and you are seeing that for those campaigns, when you break those out into chunks to kind of come back to our chunking strategy, you could take your campaigns, you could break them out into different chunks, or maybe you're going to use your portfolios, and you can run some analysis on that. So you can just take this data sheet, and rather than having, you could, I guess if your portfolios are in here, you could just, make a few copies of this, delete one portfolio so that you only have the other portfolio, and you can see across your portfolios or different groups of campaigns if there are any major differences with how these bid change rules are being calculated, and if they also have, good amount of confidence behind those, just in terms of the total volume behind those numbers. So if you do happen to have like two different groups of campaigns, families of campaigns, portfolios, brands, product lines, whatever you want to call it, and you are seeing with good statistical data and good statistical confidence that there is some brands that perform better on weekends and others that perform worse, and you do want to split those out, then you could easily just create a second schedule here. So you just hit new schedule. Maybe this one is our B2B brand, and then the second one is our B2C brand. The names are really just for your own reference, and then you could filter this down. So maybe I would say this is only going to be our AB campaigns that contain AB. There's 34 there. I'm just kind of making stuff up. And AF, these 60. So you could split them out like that. Just make sure you hit save, and then those rules will get implemented, and you'd be all set. Now, two more quick things to note. Number one is that if you, at some reason, just don't like that day parting strategy or want to pause it, you can easily just pause it or just delete that schedule entirely, which will revert those bids back to the way they were supposed to be, and you'd be all set there. So that's the first thing. You can also edit these at any time. So after you have been running a day parting strategy, it's very important to note that the data will change. As you are increasing your bids throughout the day, you're going to be getting more clicks throughout the day. If you have a lot of broad match and auto campaigns, that can mean you're getting a lot of different types of search terms throughout the day, or more clicks to different search terms that previously had pretty low conversions, and now they're just getting a lot more volume. So that could pull down some of the performance. So you do want to monitor the performance as you're doing a day parting strategy, especially for the first month or two, as things will be a little bit more volatile. But once things get dialed in, they should smoothen out. And this will not be a strategy that needs to be regularly done. So check back in on it once a month or so. At the end of a month, as you're doing your general monthly review, take a quick look at the day parting performance for that period. And if you need to tweak something, maybe you find out that the daytime hours are now only performing 5% better. You can just come back here, change those, or maybe it extended to include 7 a.m. So we'll do that, and then it will be ready for you. And then just one final thing to note. I'm sure people are also wondering, about if you also want to do a weekend increase. In that case, for a brand like this one, where we are seeing that weekends, let's just say, performs 10% worse, I would just subtract it to anything else that has already been done there. So for this whole period of the weekends, we would say minus 10%. And then for this whole period, it was already at 5%. I would just subtract 10 from that. So we would get to minus 5%. And then for this whole period, we were already at minus 15%. So we would go to minus 25%. But to really make sure that makes sense, you can see kind of how things are shaped up here. Just double check the 168-hour table. So on Saturdays and Sundays, the evening times, just the worst of the worst. Because technically what I just showed you about adding those together, that's not really the best, because when you're getting to that level of granularity of days of the week and hours of the day, this is really going to be the table that you want to reference. So when you add those items together from two different calculations, one looking at just weekends versus weekdays, another one just looking at hours of the day, you're not quite going to get this same table. It does seem like Sundays on average are underperforming, especially during these periods, but there are still some good peaks on Sundays in the afternoons. Maybe people are getting ready to buy things right before the week starts. Who knows? But you do see some of those changes where you can't just add those two together quite like that. But if you are insistent on doing a very complicated strategy and you want everything to really feel dialed in, that would be my recommendation. I mean, that would be how I would do it if you were insistent on that. But my actual recommendation would be don't insist on that. And instead, if you're not really seeing a huge discrepancy here, or especially on these 168-hour tables, I wouldn't worry about it too much, especially if the volume's just not really there. Like even here, just looking at the weekdays, in total, that's not nothing. It's about 27% of the total spend compared to the rest of the week, which is 72% of the spend. So, you can maybe downbid on Sundays a little bit, but like we said, the coefficient of variation is not very huge there. So I would not worry about that too much, but otherwise, if it were me, I would leave these as blank. I would just leave everything kind of as it was. I mean, if you really just dislike the weekends, you could do that. AdLabs does not have the ability to pause campaigns. So if you really wanted to pause campaigns on weekends, I do not recommend pausing campaigns, because pausing campaigns means you get no sales. My question is, would you rather have few sales at an affordable ACoS or zero sales? If your answer is, because obviously we don't want a lot of sales with a really high ACoS that we can't afford and we're losing money. We don't want that. But the option is either pause your campaigns and get no sales on your ads, potentially lose momentum and ranking, or just reduce the bids on the weekends to a point that makes sense, where we are spending less, but still getting some sales that are affordable, that we're making profit on. And that would be how we would go. But if you are the person who really wants to just make sure you pause campaigns on the weekends for whatever reason, I would just reduce those bids by 99%. That will effectively pause the campaigns for that period. And then once we come back into Monday morning at midnight, those will go back to where they were at. So that's it. If you guys have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out. Leave those comments down below, and I will try to answer as many of those questions as I can. Thanks for watching.